Democratic candidates for president have released various statements and responses to Donald Trump's aggression toward Iran, namely the Trump administration's decision to assassinate Iran's top military general. And the reaction that really stood out to me the most was the reaction from Bernie Sanders, because not only did he have a strong statement provided through Twitter, he also dedicated an entire event and gave a speech about Trump's aggression toward Iran. Now, I want to start off with his tweets, and then I'll show you some video examples of what he had to say. Trump's dangerous escalation brings us closer to another disastrous war in the Middle East that could cost countless lives and trillions more dollars. Trump promised to end endless wars, but this action puts us on the path to another one. We must do more than just stop war with Iran. We must firmly commit to ending US military presence in the Middle East in an orderly manner. We must end our involvement in the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen. We must bring our troops home from Afghanistan. And look, to be honest with you, Bernie has been, look, he's not perfect, but he's been very consistent when it comes to voting against increased military spending, voting against military aggression abroad. And here is his statement during his speech today where he addressed what Trump did. Take a look.
Once again, we must worry about unintended consequences and the impact of unilateral decision making. And let me repeat a warning I gave in 2002 during the debate over the war in Iraq. Quote, this is what I said back then. War must be the last recourse in our international relations. And as a caring nation, we must do everything we can to prevent the horrible suffering that a war will cause, end of quote. As the former chair of the US Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I have seen close up the pain, the death, and the despair caused by war. I've gone to too many funerals in my own state. I've talked to too many mothers who have lost their kids in war. I have talked to too many soldiers, men and women, who have come home with PTSD, who have come home without arms and without legs.
I love that statement. It was a powerful statement because oftentimes when we talk about the costs of various things that we want to do, first of all, when it comes to actual government programs that help the American people, politicians have no problem. The media has no problem talking about how much is it gonna cost, right? How are you gonna pay for that? But it's not just about money when it comes to war, right? It's also about human lives that are lost. And even if those human lives aren't lost, they come back with debilitating mental health issues, physical disabilities. There is a price that people pay. And those are the prices that the children of these warmongers don't have to worry about. The warmongers themselves don't have to worry about. They're not personally affected by it, but they have no problem expecting your children to fight in these wars and your children to pay for the price, right? Like, no one ever talks about it. And I think that clarity was so important.
Yeah, when we go to war with Iran, let's hope we don't. But if we do, count down to see if any cable news anchor will ever ask, how are you gonna pay for that? So that's not how it goes. But look, Bernie Sanders, unfortunately, is not representative of the rest of the Democratic Party.
No.
So other Democratic leaders had some positive things to say today and some mediocre things to say, but their actions ring louder. So on Schumer, he gave a speech. There was parts of the speech that I thought were great, and I'm happy that he at least stood up. In the past, the Democrats have immediately crumbled. Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, John Kerry, they all voted for the Iraq war. They all did as Bush and Cheney told them to do. And by the way, Biden running for election now saying, oh, I have great experience. Now, I remember your experience, it was terrible. It was bowing down to Republicans as they started the last terrible war. Anyway, but the thing that Schumer focused on the most, which frustrated me, was he said the Trump administration did not consult with the Gang of Eight that Schumer is in Congress. He should, it's important, I don't want to minimize it. More importantly, they should get permission from Congress to declare war. But basically Schumer's saying, you impinged upon my prerogatives. Oh, that's like the least interesting part of this, right? And so don't get into technicalities. Tell us why it's morally wrong. And then that leads to the most important critique of the Democratic Party. Ro Khanna introduced an amendment to the defense authorization bill that would have prevented the Trump administration from taking any military action against Iran without asking Congress first. Democratic leadership stripped that amendment out. They said, don't worry about it. I bet Trump will be okay. I bet he'll ask us anyway. Then Barbara Lee had an amendment. I'm giving credit to these great progressive leaders. Barbara Lee had a great amendment saying, you know what, authorization of military force that we signed on decades ago after the 9/11 attacks is not relevant anymore and we should end it. Democratic leadership stripped it out of the bill and said, nope, we're gonna give Trump everything he wants. They gave him an extra $120 billion in defense spending.
Yep.
They let him discriminate against transgender people in the military. They stripped out the two most important provisions that would have prevented war. They gave him everything. So now they say, oh, my prerogatives have been impinged upon, etc. I can't believe how recklessly he acted. He should have followed process, etc. But you need a clarion call like Bernie Sanders to say it is morally wrong.
Yes.
It is, and it is wrong priorities for America. We need to care about our kids and about our health care and education and all of these things instead of worrying about the next war we're gonna start or the process argument that Schumer and Democratic leadership is making.
I do want to go to one final video, and this is not a new video, it's from 6 months ago. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because it's not just about tackling these issues from a moral perspective and a perspective that actually leads to a better, brighter future for Americans and the Middle East. It's also about challenging the mainstream media narrative when it comes to war and when it comes to military aggression abroad. Take a look.
Was President Trump's decision this week to call off that strike the right one?
See, it's like somebody setting a fire to a basket full of paper and then putting it out. He helped create the crisis and then he stopped the attacks. The idea that we're looking at a president of the United States who, number one, thinks that a war with Iran is something that might be good for this country.
He was just doing a limited strike.
Oh, just a limited strike. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I just didn't know that it's okay to simply attack another country with bombs, just a limited strike. That's an act of warfare.
So when that interview happened at the time, we covered it, and it's just as good watching it again today, obviously just as relevant. Referring to an airstrike, this very serious act of military aggression against Iran as a limited airstrike, like minimizing it and making it seem like it's not a big deal is crazy. But like that type of military aggression has been normalized, right? To the point where corporate media thinks like, yeah, like what's the big deal? It's like a limited airstrike. It's not like a full-blown airstrike. Like what's the difference? It's an airstrike. It's military aggression against a sovereign country that's gonna lead to an escalation of violence.
Yeah, and if it happened to us, we would never call it a limited airstrike. Could you imagine? Iran took out Phoenix, Arizona today, but it was a limited airstrike.
Yeah, and not even we in some general sense, that reporter would never describe it that way. They were told to use that term either by a politician or by a representative of the Pentagon, and the simplest standard should be, you don't have to use the words they tell you to use,
yes.
But almost no one on TV can actually meet that standard.
They just repeat and regurgitate what the Pentagon tells them. And that's not journalism. That's not journalism. You're supposed to be skeptical of everything that comes out of the mouths of the powerful, right? Whether they're members of the corporate world or politicians. Don't just simply do their bidding for them. Don't be a propaganda arm of the Defense Department. And I feel like that's what happens when you use that kind of terminology. It's stupid.
And last thing, guys, is do you see anybody in the press pointing out what we just pointed out? Hey, I can't believe Nancy Pelosi stripped out the two parts of the defense authorization that would have prevented Donald Trump from actually starting this war. They will never be criticized for that. You can get some criticism of Donald Trump, okay, at least for now. But criticism of Democratic establishment that enabled him to do that? I mean, look, if they were gonna give him $120 billion extra, maybe they could have negotiated and gotten those two clauses in, which could have made all the difference in the world in preventing a war. But as usual, Democratic leadership totally crumbled, caved into Donald Trump, who they were supposed to be resisting, and the corporate media will almost never point that out. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.